group saw how hard it was a task to go through so many resolutions in such a short period of time. And so we also discussed about procedures and how we would like our working group to take place, because we believe that these groups should, of course, continue throughout the week, so we can continue to discuss about timely inputs and to collaborate on advocacy and what we could be doing together. Next slide, please. So for time's sakes, we decided to focus our discussions on two specific resolutions. The one on the role of UNEP and UNIA in delivering the environmental dimension of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and the one on the effective implementation of the Paris Climate Agreement. What we decided, and that considering the resolutions have many political issues behind them that we are not clear of, that we should be also mindful of the fact that making suggestions or comments about that can be easily outdated. And especially we noticed that it's very hard to work with the resolutions that are changing basically on a daily basis. We had like some people looking into old resolutions and some people with the neo version. So consider that we have opened Google Docs for both the resolutions and key messages that we would like to deliver in each of these topics. And we also created a mailing list of this working group so we can continue to discuss by email. Also, I'd like to suggest the co-chairs of the Facilitation Committee that we also dedicate some time during the mornings for the working groups to meet alongside the morning meetings, the strategy and the major groups meeting, and if we can see how that could work so we can continue to discuss that on checking the daily agenda and how it would be important to be on this place, on that place, or talk to this delegate or that. So especially, we dedicated a lot of time on discussions on the specific resolution of UNEP and the 2030 Agenda. We definitely agree and support that both UNEP and UNIA have a very strong role in delivering, reporting, reviewing, and monitoring the environmental dimension of the 2030 Agenda. And because of that, we think that UNIA should be aligned to the HLPF meetings, and UNEP's program should be coherent with what is being discussed around the implementation of the SDGs. We also emphasize that UNEP and UNIA should give a very strong role to the Regional Environmental Ministers Forum. And specifically, we have to take into consideration that UNIA could serve more as a political platform, serving inputs to the process and focusing on the role of the ministers, while UNEP could carry its technical work, for example, providing inputs to the GSDR and the Secretary General SDG Progress Report. That are going to be pretty much the two main documents around the implementation of the SDGs. Also, on our key messages about this process, we think that UNEP and UNIA should prepare and deliver a very strong outcome and input for the HLPF, especially in 2016, this year. The HLPF meeting is going to take place barely a month from now. So it's very timely that UNIA produces some kind of very strong and full of content outcome for that. And if this year's HLPF theme is ensuring that no one is left behind, we'd like to emphasize that the environmental dimension should not be left behind, and UNEP and UNIA should not be left behind in this process. Also, regarding that, we also think that UNIA gives us the opportunity to push ministers here to carry on a participatory process in their national frameworks for follow-up and review. And finally, we have right now the opportunity to make contributions to the definition of the future themes of the HLPF, which is currently being discussed in New York. And regarding that, we feel that we, as the major groups and stakeholders, of UNEP and mindful of the environmental issues, that we should advocate for a stronger environmental dimension across the HLPF themes. For example, the theme for 2017 was ensuring food security on a safe planet. And what we are proposing here is that we add the word healthy, and that is also connecting to the theme of the high-level segment of UNIA, so it's already a door that could facilitate the involvement of UNIA in this process. And also, we have discussed about removing by 2030, first because it's already implied, the whole agenda is supposed to be by 2030, but also because ensuring food security should be something that we strive to achieve as from now. So, and for the theme proposed for 2018, we have come with the proposal to replace productive capacities. The current proposal reads, making cities sustainable and building productive capacities. Instead of productive capacities, to change that for social and physical infrastructure, although there was some debate about how that exactly reflects the environmental dimension. But the thing is, this week, the co-chairs of the HLPF process, Denmark and Belize, are holding informal consultations, including online, for member states and also major groups and stakeholders to provide inputs on that. So it's a very key opportunity for us to come up and say that we'd like to have bigger importance and more visibility to the environmental dimension, which, although we already understand the environmental dimension is included there, we feel that it can be easily overlooked when we are dealing with topics that's poverty reduction or the social and the economic dimensions of the sustainable development. Finally, we also discussed the Paris Agreement, the resolution on effective implementation of the Paris Agreement, and we reached consensus about the need, for example, to have human rights at the core of implementation. And I thank you. I received some inputs already from some colleagues with language and wording of what they think should be included there, including with a view to the resolution. And we are going to continue to work on that through the Google Docs. And anyone who would like to receive, I think we can send to the list all these Google Docs and the instructions about what we are planning to do with them, so anyone who wants to contribute can do it. We also think that it's important that we be attentive to the messages that are coming right now from the major groups and stakeholders that are taking part at the UNFCCC process and negotiations in Bonn. And for example, a clear message that they are stating there is that member states need to ratify the Paris Climate Agreement as soon as possible. And we think that we should explore UNIA and the advocacy opportunities here to also emphasize that. And specifically on UNEP, we think that it should have somehow some kind of coordination with UNFCCC to ensure that we are going to have the implementation of the Paris Climate Agreement. So pretty much that's what we could come up with in this time, including, I thank you very much, Rapporteur Fazo. I'm gonna let him, I don't know if you wanna add something else. Yes. And also, especially Rina, for putting together the Google Docs. So as I said, the working group is going to continue to work throughout the week, and we are very open to any additional comments and inputs. Thank you very much. Fazal, please.
Now, thank you. A quick two issues on Paris Agreement. Also, we talked about the reflection of the CBDR language on the text, and also the roadmap for the fulfillment of the finance, the 100 billion commitment. So finally, I would like also to welcome, if you're not in the working group, you could also come share your comments on the resolution that we are working on. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to working group 2.
Hello, my name is Emily Russian. Working group 2, so we were working on chemicals, agriculture and water issues, and plastics as well. So we had a large group with varied expertise, which were all very relevant. It was wonderful. We talked about goals in the intervention process quickly, and then decided to split into 2 groups because it was such a big area to cover. So generally, I haven't got quite as good a summary as these guys, but generally in the chemical section, we decided to keep a lot of the text that the USA was wanting to delete. We also had some discussion around asking for the UNEP executive director to globally increase awareness around chemicals to make it sort of a higher priority. And then on the sustainable consumption and production, we also wanted to keep a lot of the text that they wanted to delete. Around the ocean side of things, we wanted most of the text that Argentina was wanting to delete, we wanted to keep. There was also wanting to add and ensure that civil society views were included, and that there was a global binding sort of treaty on areas that are beyond national jurisdictions. And global legal binding instrument on marine plastics as well. And they also wanted to have an update on the London Protocol under the UNCLOS on marine pollution from extractives explicitly. So as well, I think if anyone else is wanted to have any input into the area, would be welcome. And if I've missed anything from the group, please let me know. Of course, I think you guys are all very aware of how many things we covered, so I can't sort of go through all of those, but that's the general idea, and we welcome any feedback and input. Thank you.
Any addition from the group on this? If not, we go to the next group. Who's the next group? Working group 3? Can you give...
We concentrated on interventions in relation to the stakeholder engagement policy, the resolution on the Montevideo Program of Action, and also we came up with references to be included in the common statement. I'm going to let the rapporteur for our group speak to some of the messages, and also we have come up with specific statements to support each of the resolutions that we have language for. So Marcus, do you want to take the floor?
Yes, thank you, Carol. Good afternoon, everyone. So on the stakeholder engagement policy, we identified the difficulty of crafting messages and concrete language, since there were several spaces where this issue is live. And so we, as a first approach, decided to keep these spaces under observation so that we would be able to tailor language to meet the changing dynamics of these moving pictures. That said, these spaces that we identified are a statement in the common messages, and we drafted that and sent to Working Group 5. Susanna, do you have that? When the relevant agenda item comes up in the Committee of the Whole, we are also then going to be prepared to making a statement there. And similarly, the third space is a working group that is going to advise or work with the outgoing UNIA one president in dealing with the stakeholder engagement policy. So those are the three spaces. In terms of messaging, in general, there are a couple points that need to be highlighted. One is that the proposal currently on the table from UNIA President is the result of much compromise and good faith negotiation and the ultimate bottom line. We believe that more work needs to be focused on strengthening this policy in light of paragraph 88H of the Rio outcome document. But at this time, the proposal of the President can be adopted as it is. That said, further attempts at weakening it, such as through the introduction of a veto, a silent veto, the non-objection principle as sometimes is referred, or the elimination of the transparency elements in the process of review of accreditation, those would be unacceptable and would lead us to reject the whole policy. If the negotiations are reopened, then we believe that there are elements to further strengthening it, such as through the introduction of an appeal, review mechanisms of self-organization, etc. So that in terms of stakeholder engagement. In terms of Montevideo program, we talked about some of the missing issues that are in this resolution. Perhaps by way of background, Montevideo 4 is the fourth iteration of 10-year programs designed to strengthen environmental law worldwide. There was a meeting to review the midterm operation of this program. It took place in Montevideo. It came up with a number of recommendations, and based on that meeting, Uruguay at OECPR tabled a resolution to advance on these recommendations. The European Union was of the view that no resolution was needed. The US said that a resolution, it could live with it, but wanted to change the whole operational part. There is now a compromise based on these varying positions, but the compromise is missing some language that we believe is key, such as that concerning UNIA resolution on principle 10, UNIA 1 resolution, such as that on implementation of the Bali guidelines on principle 10, such as on wildlife crime. So we have prepared a statement for the relevant agenda items and, in addition, specific language that we will engage in bilaterals with the US, with the EU, and Uruguay. Then we also discussed on environmental human rights defenders, which is an issue that I'm sure we all care about, and considered that this UNIA 2 was a moment for awareness raising. We also sent language to Susana on this issue for the common statement and calling for a minute of silence acknowledging the more than 1,000 environmental and human rights defenders that have been killed over the last decade. We're also thinking about possibilities for a UNIA 3 resolution and start thinking about building blocks and tactics, and so that is moving forward. Finally, we talked about MEAs and the relationship with UNEP. This is another resolution that's on the list, and concluded very briefly that we had nothing to say about that. Thank you.
It's okay. And then working group 4, though. Is there a question?
Yeah, the working group 2, just want to add something to the presentation by Emily, that is to recognize the need for creating an effective after-use plastics economy on the base of the development of circular economy. That's an addition to our presentation in working group 2.
I think for working group 2, you sent me a very detailed document with all track changes from the resolutions, which is good for the work we are going to do next week. But I think it would be good if you can also, and then include the sentence you just said, have some main messages we can put in the report.
Then I guess that this sentence is in the detailed document that you got.
No.
Okay.
The detailed document is fine, but not for the report, because
okay.
we cannot put all the resolutions with your track changes in a report. So it's good for the work for next week, because then, yes, we have to focus on the resolutions and the track changes and the text, or the details. But what I do miss from working group 2 is to have a kind of paragraph of some bullet points with very specific hot issues.
Okay, we fix that.
Is that okay?
Yeah?
Good, thank you. Then it's now for... Okay. Who?
Missing chair. It's a little summary from Working Group 4. We had a lot of resolutions on a lot of issues, so we just tried to go through them and identify areas where we felt we should have a position as civil society and where possible particular elements of the language which we felt needed attention. On illegal trade in wildlife and wildlife products, there are two elements, one in PP3, one in OP1, where South Africa are trying to weaken the text by mixing excuse me, the illegal and legal trade in wildlife, and this kind of needs attention. That was the main thing for wildlife products. The second one was the sustainable and optimal management of natural capital for sustainable development and poverty eradication. And our conversation mirrored that in the CPR over the last few months, where we have quite deep concerns about the use of natural capital and the connotations it has regarding value systems for environmental resources. So we worked on a paragraph which could potentially go into civil society briefing. Still needs some tweaks on the wording to try and find whether natural patrimony or heritage or inheritance or which of these words would be best suited to replace natural capital. But that we'll need to do more work on that paragraph later on. On mainstreaming biodiversity for well-being, there are only a couple of issues outstanding in the text. One where we think it's important to retain the strategic plan for biodiversity and the Aichi biodiversity target, and under paragraph 8, which is language contested by Egypt, where we think it's important to welcome the work of the CBD over the last 20 years and introduce water as a sector and regret the lack of references to indigenous peoples and local communities and women who are all intimately connected with protection and preservation of biodiversity. On combating desertification, land degradation and sustainable management of rangelands, it was a shame that this resolution was only introduced a few days ago because it's obviously a significant global issue. Nobody had really looked at the text because it's only been around for a couple of days, but we did feel that it should recognise and upscale the contributions of civil society and local communities and the role of indigenous knowledge in combating desertification. On protection of the environment in areas affected by armed conflict, a couple of sort of key messages, one around UNEP needing a stronger mandate to work effectively throughout the conflict cycle, so that's in prevention, assessment and restoration. That legal protection of the environment during conflict needs to be strengthened based on principles of human rights and international environmental law, and also needs stronger implementation of the existing law protecting the environment in relation to armed conflict. On the politically exciting field-based environmental assessment in the Gaza Strip, we had a long discussion about this. The issues on the table are the Morocco's text calling for a fresh post-conflict environmental assessment in Gaza has been blocked by the US, Israel and Canada. We question the EU have put a compromise in which just recognises the importance and utility of post-conflict environmental assessments generally. We discussed about whether it's counterproductive to have resolutions focusing on specific conflicts or whether we should need to add our support to Morocco's initiative because clearly the Gaza Strip is in need of environmental assessment. And so, yeah, we felt it important to support Morocco's Gaza resolution and at the same time also call for UNEP to do more post-conflict environmental assessments because there are many countries where they never do assessments. And then finally, we also discussed environmental human rights defenders, and like the previous group, thought it might be timely to try and support the introduction of a resolution at UNEA 3 on this issue, on extractives and indigenous people and various other issues that are wrapped into that. And that concludes the report.
I think that was very, very clear and very helpful, also your report. So an example for the other working groups. I don't know. But now we go to the last one on the common statement.
Thank you. our working group was discussing on the messages to be included in our common statement. I want to thank the members of the working group for their work. So we have mainly include some general messages on UNIA and the role of major groups and stakeholders. Also, we have included a message on the stakeholder engagement policy as in the terms that Marcos Orellana has presented. Since UNIA 2 is taking after all the 2015 sustainability decisions and commitments, we think that UNIA 2 is a great opportunity to take bold decisions to contribute to this political momentum, and also has a major role to play in setting the stage and the delivering of the full and effective implementation of the environmental dimension of the Agenda 2030. Also, we want to reiterate that we support and concur that UNIA is the leading environmental authority, and the UNEP, the executive institution. In that sense, we think that UNIA 2 should advance global policy coherence and complementarity within the UN system and beyond, including at the national and regional levels in policy and implementation. We also consider that effective follow-up mechanisms for monitoring, transparency, and accountability are essential, and that major groups and stakeholders play a critical role in all these three areas. Also, we want to acknowledge the work and the support, the vision of the outgoing UNEP executive director. And we, major groups and stakeholders, reiterate our common commitment, to contribute to this process, and we're willing to step up to this challenge. And so we look forward to continue and further strengthen this positive relationship with member states and also the new executive director. And also we have included short and concrete outcomes of each of the sessions, the particular issues we think are critical to implementation, no? On particular, mobilizing domestic resources and addressing systemic failures, including illicit financing, tax BEPS, bribery, and corruption. Also to acknowledge UNEP's efforts to promote Principle 10 globally, and we want to express appreciation for the improvement of the access to information policy, and also express concern about the need to respect paragraph 88 and to adopt a forward-looking and progressive stakeholder engagement policy. Also, we want to acknowledge that UNIA provides an important opportunity to catalyze strength and bring forward multi-stakeholder partnerships, which we believe they are accountable, transparent, equitable, and effective, and that UNEP will require appropriate institutional infrastructure to do this work within, with major groups and stakeholders. We're missing one sentence on the multiple pathways to sustainable development, so we take advantage now to ask for this contribution. And on the we want to also acknowledge that UNIA decision and policy outcomes must be based on strong science informed by major groups and stakeholders, technical expertise, research, citizen science, and indigenous knowledge. We think this is critical both in the implementation and in the monitoring of the 2015 commitments. And also, we want to set a high priority on health and environment, since this connection underpins social and economic development, and we call that UNIA to embed this in all related resolutions. And last, we want to also make a reference on the environmental defenders, as it was mentioned before. Thank you.
Okay, so now what we have to do in the last 10 minutes. So we have the text now. So as I said, we are going to put it all. Is there a question? Very urgent? Okay, please go ahead then.
Share my, I just wanted to know if the group on the overall statement added the CBDR in the, because during the means of the implementation session yesterday, we talked about the CBDR. So I just wanted to make sure that the CBDR is there. Thank you.
Do we have a consensus on that? I mean, because I remember of the last open-ended CPR, we had discussion about that. Someone wanted in, others are opposing to it. So what was your point that you wanted to make on the CBDR?
Since it's already been agreed principle and have a historical background, and most of the countries have already been agreed to that. So I think we should also emphasize and stress on CBDR.
Yeah, I agree, but I do agree with that. But I also know that there are other people that are not agreeing on that. So that's why I ask. And I think Rina is one of them or not? Yes, I know. That's why I...
It's not about CBDR. I don't know whether that we're going to talk about it now, but actually I want to add about thank you for putting the systemic issue and addressing systemic issue, including financing. Yeah, and then can you also put the trade and investment, and then make a special clause on the ISDS, the investor state dispute settlement, that we already talked about also in the discussion yesterday. So just an input.
Would you agree that there is mentioned, the CBDR is mentioned in the text?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
good.
I agree that we should have the CBDR mentioned in the text.
Then there is at least this moment consensus on that, so that's good. Yeah. So what we are going to do, I mean, during lunch and the panel is putting all this information together in a format that is more or less the same for everything. And that we will discuss then after the panel that we have this afternoon. So we try to stop the afternoon at 5:30, so then we have 1 hour to 6:30 to have final conclusions and consensus on what has to go into the report. The other thing, yeah, but I'm going to finalize what I said. Okay, the other thing is the common statement for tomorrow, which is a 3-minute statement. So that means that I think it's good that with the points we have, that this afternoon also, I mean, in the meantime that we have the panel and so on, that a drafting team, I mean 3-4 people together with the content we have, that they make a statement. I mean, not bullet points, but a statement. A decision that we have to take, but you can already think about it, how we are going to deal with it, is who is going to read that statement out. So we have the 9 major groups. We have then a lot of people within the major groups. So I think we have to decide who is going to read that statement out. We are not going to discuss that now, but that will be then also, that has to be done in the last hour as well. Just for your information, we received the information that in the working groups there are 5 seats for the major groups and stakeholders. That means we have 9 major groups, but the passes that will be distributed can be switched in between people. So if someone goes out, you can give the pass to someone else. But there are 5 seats reserved for the major groups and stakeholders. I think that's all we can do for now, unless there is a really burning question or comment to make. I see there one.
I wanted to ask about the common statement to be circulated among all the major group and stakeholders. So maybe the working group 5 can make a Google Doc and circulate that, or you could email that to the list.
Yeah, so yes, that I forgot because it's here on my paper. Because there was the idea of having the working groups, I mean, have them the whole week, I mean, as working groups, and have separate email lists. I think it's okay, but I think it's also okay that people that were not in the meetings, like me, for instance, want to be informed on everything. So I think it's good that we can put the names of the people that are going to manage the email list per working group, that people also know if they want to be added on another working group, that they can be added as well. And then we use the UNEA list, where you're all on, for also the more general information that has to go to everybody. Yeah, is that a good idea? So can I put the names of the facilitators then as the ones that are also facilitating that email list per working group? Yeah, okay. So, yeah, and then I think some will work on Google Docs, others not, but I think that's then depending on the working group itself, I would say. Is that okay? And the comment statement, yes, I think it's good that if we work on the report this afternoon, and the comment statement, we will send it out, of course, to everybody. And that I will send to the UNEA list, so not only to the working group that works on the comment statement. So that everybody has a say on that. There was another question? Please.
There was a point actually raised earlier that maybe some statement about multiple pathways to sustainable development be made. I'd just like to say that a major point there was actually a recognition of the role of civil society and communities in developing different pathways to sustainable development, and thus such development should be people-centered and one that enshrines human rights, a respect for human rights, accountability, transparency, and sorry.
Susanna will be in contact with you, so you can discuss on the exact language. And then I would like to give the last word to Lucy, and then we can close this session. A little bit frustrating because I think we had a lot of things to discuss yet, but I mean, it's also because of time. There is a lunch session going on in the press room, I think it's on your agenda, and then we start after that, what is the hour then? 2:30, with a presentation on the future vision for UNEA and the GSF. But Lucy, you have the floor now, and after that I will see you at 2:30.
Good afternoon, everyone. Where I come from, when someone says hi, you say hi back. Good afternoon. So like Leila mentioned, we have this brown bag on environmental safeguards, and it's going to be an interesting one, and we think you should try and attend, not just for the brown bag, but also for the information. It's going to take it's going to take place at the press room, we all know the press room, somewhere on the long corridor on the lower concourse. That's where we have the press room, and you can we encourage you to attend that. Number two, we have the cocktail this evening at 7 o'clock at the rec center, and you don't want to miss that one as well. We throw nice parties, as you might know. Then the UNEP-sponsored participants, if you've given Sandra your original documents, kindly pick them back from her, and if you have not, please let me have them or Sandra have them by tomorrow 9 a.m. so that we can deal with the other business at from 2:30 to 5:30, and that's the only slot available for the major groups. So let's have the documents so that you can get your per diems tomorrow, because if not, you have to wait until Friday, and that's important. The other information later is going to update you as we go regarding the cow and how you're going to be sitting and speaking and all that. The MGFC will update you. But all the documents are already available. I checked this morning, the portal is working. We gave you the login credentials yesterday. So please go in there and look at the documents already so that you're not very blind starting tomorrow, okay? Bon appetit, lunch is upstairs. Please bring your wallet with you. And the press center is in that general direction.
Okay, so bon appetit, and see you in a few hours.